So thank you for joining us this evening. This is a deep dive into SQE2. So I imagine that most of you are joining us as you are studying perhaps for the SQE1 currently, or you've already achieved that and you're now looking at the next steps, or perhaps you're at the start of your journey and with SQE and you're just having a look at what will be to come for you. But this evening we'll be having a bit of a close look at the SQE2 for you. So we'll be discussing our SQE2 prep course. To make you aware, we also do have the SQE1 prep course available as well. We also offer an LLM in legal practice, which includes both the SQE1 and 2 preparation courses, and also a GDL conversion course as well. If you have any questions, please do pop them in the chat. If I can ask Jane, if I'm talking, if you see any at all that you think is urgent, please do let me know. If you have any questions at all, as I say, yeah, pop them in the chat. We'll come to them at the end. There's a few QR codes on some of the slides. So if you're perhaps watching this on your laptop and you have your phone handy, feel free to scan the QR codes, which will take you to pages that you can look at later. But I will try and add those into the chat as links as well for you to access. Closed captions are enabled should you wish to use them, and the session is being recorded, so we'll be able to send you a copy of the recording to watch back later as well. So some introductions to us this evening. Jane, would you mind introducing yourself, please?
Delighted to. So I'm Jane Waddell. I'm Head of Curriculum Development and Design here at the College of Legal Practice. My background is I practiced as a solicitor for many years. I did corporate finance. All our supervisors have either practiced or they're solicitors or barristers. So I head up really everything that's academic at the college.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jane. So I am Nicola Gordge. I'm the Student Recruitment Manager here at the College of Legal Practice. So I oversee the journey of prospective students from initial interest to signing up to a programme with the college. So chances are if you call us up or if you send us an email with some questions about our courses, it'll either be myself or my colleague Sydney who will be answering those for you. Abbie, are you okay just to say a quick introduction as well?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Abbie Mattocks. I'm a human rights solicitor. I took the LLM in legal practice with the SQE1 and SQE2, and I've now qualified.
Brilliant. Thanks, Abbie. Lovely. Okay, so just a quick overview of what we will be planning to cover this evening then. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview of the College of Legal Practice. For those of you who are not familiar with us, we'll be helping you to get some understanding of the SQE2 assessments and for the obviously the SQE2 preparation course that we offer here. You'll be able to hear from Abbie about her experience with the SQE2. And we'll be giving you some tips about how to best prepare for it as well. And then, as I say, we will be coming to those questions at the end. Just see a quick note has popped up about is it being recorded? Yes, it is being recorded. We will be sending out the recording to everyone who's registered at a later date, okay? So who are we then? So for those of you who don't know, we are a fully online accredited postgraduate law school built fully for delivering our courses online. We specialise in SQE preparation and we've been helping students to prepare for them since they were launched in 2021. Our parent company, the College of Law, are leaders in legal education in Australia. So we're very experienced as an organisation in the delivery of digital learning. We are all about accessible, affordable legal education as a not-for-profit organisation. So traditionally, law has been known for being a profession with many barriers to entry. So we aim to really assist with eliminating this by offering courses at an affordable price. We offer personal and targeted individual support where students get access to high levels of one-to-one supervisors who are qualified solicitors and from the legal profession themselves. And lastly, we ensure we facilitate an inclusive and learning environment for our learning and teaching. We can make reasonable adjustments for those that need it. Obviously, then being able to give everyone an opportunity to get the most out of their studies with us. So just briefly, some companies that we do work with. So as well as students applying to study with us directly, we also work with some companies as their SQE preparation course providers for their employees. And we also work with some universities as well, where we offer the SQE part of their academic courses. So next I'm going to hand you over to Jane, if that's okay, please, Jane, just to run through further, obviously, into the SQE, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So here we set out what you're heading towards and the assessment, because I think you need to know what the assessment is in order to judge your prep course and the amount of work you need to do. So here we are, SQE2 assessment. It's skills-based, that's the overriding point here. We're looking at assessing skills. You can't do SQE2 until you've passed SQE1. And SQE1 is all about functioning legal knowledge. Once you've got that knowledge, you're bringing it forward into SQE2. 50% of the mark for SQE2 is based on the functioning legal knowledge that you've acquired from SQE1. The other 50% of the assessment is the skills. And this is really what we're building. So the skills need a legal context. You've already got the knowledge, and now you're being assessed in the skills. And the practice areas that the principal practice areas are business, dispute resolution, and we've got property there, it's always there, you can never get away from that, criminal, and wills. So those are the 5 main practice areas. However, they can draw on other bits of law. So things like tax tends to be pervasive, client conduct's pervasive. So even if you're interviewing a client in the context of wills, you would need to have regard to ethics and conduct and so on. So although there are 5 distinct practice areas, there are other ones coming in alongside or just being drawn on, underpinning, if you like. Then the skills, we've listed them there on the right-hand side of your screen, and their advocacy, which is what we call an oral skill. So you need to stand up and present as if you were in court. There's case and matter analysis, which is a written skill, and then there's client interview, and then writing an attendance note in the back of the interview. So you're needing to ask the right questions in order to, in the interview, in order to write a proper attendance note and analyse the client's problem. And that's the other oral assessment. So there's 2 that are oral, advocacy and client interview. Then there's legal drafting, and that's drafting legal documents, and it might be in the context of business, so it could be board minutes, or it might be in the context of wills and be a will, for instance. Often you're using precedents or templates and being given information, and then you're having to draft the document. There's legal research, and this is a little bit sanitized in that because in SQE2 they can't give you free rein to the internet, so they actually give you extracts, and you look at a collection of extracts and work out which ones are relevant and base your research on that and ignore the ones that are just red herrings. Then lastly, we've got legal writing. And legal writing, it might be in the form of writing a letter to a client or a memo, but it's being able to communicate and do it in a way that's relevant and takes account of your audience, whether it's somebody in the law firm, maybe the partner who's supervising you, or it might be writing to a commercial client, or it might be writing to a private client, in which case you're having to handle the information and the way you communicate it slightly differently. So those are the 6 skills which are assessed in the 5 main practice areas. on the day when you sit, or days is plural, when you sit SQE2 assessment, it's managed by Kaplan on behalf of the SRA, and they call them stations. So there's 16 stations. So it really is quite, and I'm sure Abbie might touch on this, but it's a lot. And you really need to know your stuff. You need stamina, intellectual stamina. I think you probably need patience and hold your nerve as you're going around all the stations. And there's 12 what we call written stations. The stations themselves aren't written, but you're going to them to do your writing, whether it's legal research, drafting or writing or whatever. And then there's 4 oral stations that assess advocacy and client interview. Now, you won't know what the practice area context is for those. That will be a surprise for on the day. And assessment dates are every 3 months. So they come up pretty fast. And one of the reasons they're more frequent than SQE1 is simply because they take so much organising for Kaplan. 16 skills and all 16 written stations is a lot to organise, particularly the oral ones. And don't forget, the assessment fee for SQE2 is very separate to paying a prep fee to a provider like ourselves. So the fee is payable to Kaplan, and that's the fee you pay in order to sit the assessment. And currently it's 2,902, but it does rise every year. So I think that is a sizable fee, and that reflects just the volume of what's being asked of Kaplan and yourselves with those 16 assessment stations that you have to work your way through. All right, Nicola, could we have the next slide? Thank you.
Thank you.
So I've just talked about what the SQE2 assessment looks like. This is me talking about what our prep course looks like. And we've designed it in a way that will prepare you for SQE2 and tries to mimic as much as we can what you'll be doing in SQE2. So you have 24 study units, and they'll cover the 6 legal skills in each practice area. So we'll go through every practice area and let you have a practice in each skill that's assessed in that practice area. So there will be surprises on the day, but we try and eliminate as many as we can by giving you lots and lots of practice. Given 50% of the law comes from SQE1 and your functioning legal knowledge, we give you access to our SQE1 prep course. So you've access to the manuals and you've access to the MCQs. And before you practice each skill, we will give you reading to do so you can top up your knowledge and be ready to practice a skill with knowledge that's secure and retrievable. We mimic the SQE style assessments as much as we can, and we hold regular surgeries and town halls. Now, the surgeries, if you've studied SQE1 with us, you'll be familiar with them. So they're like mini lectures, and they pull out key topics in the practice areas and also for the skills. And on top of that, we've town halls, and they're more holistic. It's just taking a step back and having a look. And again, if you've studied SQE1 with us, you'll be familiar. They just give you an overview of where you should be, what you should be thinking about, perhaps how the cohort's done on previous some formative assessments, and so on. Then the way the course is structured, we give you demos so you can see the skill, what it should look like. Then you can have a practice and mark your own work. And I think for me, that's one of the key things. Your students are more critical of themselves, and therefore marking your own work's a really good exercise in critiquing your own work and also thinking not just what you could do better, but what you actually did well. But the second point is it gets you into the head of a marker. If you're looking at an exemplar, you're starting to think like someone who's about to mark work, and that informs your learning and your delivery of the skills. Then once you've built up, practiced, seen demos, we then have practice and feedback sessions. So you do something, we advise you to time it, and you submit it to us for marking and feedback. We mark it against the assessment criteria that the SRA use. So it's closely aligned to the SQE2 assessment criteria, and therefore that gives you a real feel for whether you're on track or not. But on top of the mark, you're actually getting feedback and explaining what you've done well, what you haven't done well. You know, it might be is your knowledge is undermined, your assessment, but the skills are actually very good. So we've 16 practice and feedback sessions. On top of that, we give you a skills guide, so you can look at in your own time what the skills should look like and digest it. You get that as an electronic copy, but you also get a hard copy. We ran pilots for both SQE1 prep course and our SQE2, and one of the real surprises of our pilots was that students still want hard copy materials. Most students like to mark something up as well as having it online where they can click on it very quickly. So you'll get a skills guide as well as access to the online SQE manuals. On top of that, we can, when you're probably about 2/3 of the way through the course, we can tell, looking at your practice and feedback results, whether you're on track to pass SQE2. And we call this our ready review for every student, where we sit and look at your results with your personal supervisor and discuss whether you're ready for SQE2 based on those practice and feedbacks that you've been doing. Lastly, but absolutely not least, we've lots of personal supervision for you. So you've lots of points of contact, including those 16 practice and feedbacks. But on top of that, you've one-to-one meetings with a personal supervisor, and we think those are key for students, where you can discuss your progress, your engagement, whether you could be studying, rearranging the way you study or whatever, but you have a contact with your personal supervisor. So moving over to the right-hand column here, there's a number of options that we offer. So we offer a 10-week course, which is truly full-time, and we'll look at that a little bit more later. And 20 weeks is part-time, although I'd say it keeps up a pretty brisk pace, particularly if you're working alongside studying. And then we have a 40-week one, which is a much slower burn and is popular. And all of this is at level 7. So you're really working at quite a high postgraduate level, and it attracts 30 credits. So it's 30 credits at a master's level. And our fees, which of course are separate from Kaplan, are £2,300, regardless of whether you do the full-time, part-time, or the 40-week part-time course. They all have the same content. It's just identical content. It's just stretched out over a different duration. All right, Nicola, I'll hand back to you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jane. Okay, lovely. So I'm going to ask some questions to Abbie, if that's okay, Abbie. I did just notice a message pop up, which I will just answer quickly as well, because I think that might make more sense for everyone in case you've missed that point already. Someone has asked about the town halls and the surgeries if you attend them in person. We did cover it at the start, but we are fully online. We don't have any campuses or any UK sort of office facilities, so we are fully online provider. So that will probably make a bit more sense, particularly learning about how Abbie managed to study alongside working as well. So I'm going to stop sharing a moment so that myself and Abbie can have a chat, if that's okay, Abbie.
Yeah, fine.
Brilliant, thank you. So Abbie, could you just give us a little bit of a background, please, about you know, your sort of journey into the legal profession, and obviously taking the qualifications that you have so far?
Yeah, so I studied history at the University of York. Following my degree, I did about a year as a paralegal in contentious trusts and probate, and then I moved to be a paralegal in human rights, and at that point I started studying the SQE and LLM course alongside work full-time, and then I qualified last month.
Fantastic. And so yes, obviously, so you mentioned you took the LLM, and that include, we just spoke briefly about the sort of 10-week, 20-week and 40-week SQE options. It was a 20-week, I think, isn't it, that you took yourself as part
Yeah,
of
I
the
think
LLM?
so. Yeah, and I just did it how how was recommended by the college. I know
Yeah.
that some people can choose to wait some further months to take the exams, but I just did it with the time frame that was recommended. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. So obviously you took SQE1 as part of the LM first of all as well. So how different did you find sort of preparing for and studying for and then actually taking the SQE2 assessments compared to SQE1?
Yeah, I think the SQE1 was a bit of a shock to the system at first, especially when studying it alongside work, and obviously just the amount of knowledge that you have to gain. Yeah, it was a shock. So when I started the SQE2, it was almost, I don't want to say a relief, but I kind of had that knowledge already, and it was just a case of building the skills and applying the knowledge. Personally, because I've worked alongside studying, that helps in terms of building the skills. So it's just a case of bringing everything together, going over the knowledge that I'd previously had, revising it. It was a lot easier to revise for the SQE2 because I knew the knowledge. Maybe I'd forgotten some of it, but it was easier to revise the second time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. And then how did you sort of approach your revision? Was there a particular method that you had that you found worked well for you?
To be fair, I found the structure that was provided by the college to be quite helpful for me, just in terms of it set you assessments each week, and I just followed those as was recommended. I found that I had to be quite disciplined in making sure that I revised before doing the assessments. But yeah, I think it's just a case of really being disciplined and making sure that you're covering everything. You're doing the skills and you're doing the legal knowledge at the same time and balancing those two things together.
Brilliant. And how did you manage with obviously working at the same time as well? Jane mentioned that, the 20-week, although we say it's part-time, actually it's still a very it's still a high volume of work to do at the same time as working full-time if you are as well. So how did you kind of manage that balance?
Yeah, I won't lie, it was intense. It's going to be intense, especially when you're working full-time. I think it's a case of, as I say, being disciplined. You need to make sure that you're setting boundaries, in my case at work, and making sure that I'm logging off at the correct time for my work and then going straight into the revision. For me, I did revision before work for a couple of hours and then after work for a couple of hours. And even when I didn't feel like it, you just have to make sure that it's the routine that you're getting into. And if you're into that routine, even if you don't feel 100%, you're getting the work done and it does go in.
How much time do you think you were putting in sort of each week?
I'd say I did about 3 hours on a working day, and then I did about 8 hours at the weekend, maybe a bit more, depending how close I was to the exams. But yeah, I did try to have at least one day at the weekend off, just to give myself a break, and making sure I'm revising on weekdays as well, just because that day at the weekend was really needed. Yeah.
Was it a case of you were thinking, right, I've got this block of time and this is my life during this time, and then
Yeah, you have to just get into that mindset, like this needs to be done. I'm doing an hour now, I'm doing an hour after work, and yeah, just getting it done really.
Yeah, brilliant. And obviously we talked about you working at the same time. Did you say you sort of found that was actually beneficial to you to be working, or was it a hindrance, and did you think, oh gosh, I wish I had just done a standalone course when I wasn't working?
Yeah, I mean, I was a bit jealous of the people doing it full time and they could just completely focus on. But I think particularly for SQE2, I found that working alongside it really worked well, and I thought they complemented each other quite well. I was building the skills by studying, but also putting them into practice at work, and I thought that really helped just to hone in on the skills and make sure that I was doing them all properly and I could apply them at work as well. So I thought the SQE2 worked quite well with work. Yeah.
Brilliant. And did you just use the college's learning materials? Was there anything else that you found that you needed to sort of access or that was useful for you?
I think for me, it was the manuals and the assessments it's just everything that you need. Like Jane said, I found the hard copies really useful. I like to highlight everything. I don't think I even got round to completing all of the assessments that were available, because there are quite a lot. So yeah, there's definitely everything that you need. You don't really need to go looking elsewhere. So yeah.
Brilliant. And what was the most challenging part for you? Was there a particular aspect that you found particularly challenging?
Overall, I'd say it was time management. Obviously, as I've said, I've worked alongside it, but specifically for the SQE2, I'd say I thought legal research was the most challenging. Even though it's something that you do every day in your job, I found that the assessments really tried to trick you out, and that was the one assessment where there are red herrings, and that it was really easy to trip up on it. So I personally dedicated a lot of my revision time to building the skills on legal research, and I found that when I went into the exam for the SQE2, I felt well prepared to take it because I've dedicated so much time to getting it right. And yeah, I was looking for the red herrings. So yeah.
Oh, well done. Brilliant. Oh, thanks so much, Abbie. That's been really useful. We'll go through a bit more of the presentation now, but I'm sure some of the questions at the end we might be wanting to direct to yourself, if that's okay.
So thank you.
Lovely. Okay, let me just reshare my screen. Lovely. Right. Hopefully you can see that again now. Right then. So we're going to be, or Jane's going to be showing you some an example activity here in just a moment. But there's another QR code here. Should you wish to scan it, I will pop a link into the chat in a moment as well. But on our website, we do have access. We do give you access to some demo of the sort of learning platform and of some sample material, so you can have a look through that at a later date. As I say, I'll try and pop the link into the chat for you as well. But Jane, over to you, if that's okay then.
Lovely, thank you. This is probably bringing back bad memories, looking at this. And don't worry, I'm not going to put you on the spot. In fact, I'm not even going to answer it myself. But the purpose of this is just to give you a feel for what the materials look like and what's being asked of you, actually. So here we've got, the practice area is wills, and you're being asked to, it's a legal drafting demonstrations. This is the very first one, and you're being asked effectively to draft a will that's effective. So it's an email from a partner, so it's sort of thing you would get in an office, and it's setting out the client, what's required, and what you have to do. So it's very specific. And then the attendance note sets out, which is on the right-hand side there, just sets out more details. We haven't included it all. There is some more in the next slide, which I'm not going to trouble you with. But that's the attendance note, and you have to pick up the information and then produce a will. So, and you're given a time allocation, it's 45 minutes. So you do have to keep up your speed on this. So you do need, I think, to have a way of working and being organized. And that's why we give you lots and lots of practice. So you don't spend too long on one aspect, but use your time really well. And by the end, you've produced what you're being asked to do. So Abbie might differ, but my top tip to students is always read it really carefully. Read it at least once, twice, not once, but twice at least. Because often in a second read, you pick up things you haven't thought of. You're so keen to take on board what's being said, you might miss some of the little bits and possibly the red herrings that are sitting there. So, and then once you start drafting, my tip again to students would always be stop and reread the instructions halfway through, because once you've got your head in that space and go back and reread the instructions, you might see something you didn't spot earlier, and just go through it again very carefully. And then again, when you've completed the exercise, go back and read, and you go down that attendance note and make sure you ticked off everything and addressed it. So that's an example of the sort of demonstrations you're given, and also the type of exercises you're being asked to do. And then you build up gradually, you embed the knowledge, you embed the skill, and then you do a practice and feedback session where you really would be strict with your timing. All right, good, that's fine. I could keep talking, but I'm not sure we want to. All right, so back to you.
Yeah, can I ask you, are you okay still just to
Oh, sorry,
run?
yes, no, I will keep
That's
going. You're
okay. Yep.
absolutely right. Yeah, no, this is my one as well. That's fine, thanks. So here we've got top tips for passing SQE2, and they're from students and supervisors. Now remember, all our supervisors have practiced as well and have sat, not SQE, but they've sat exams. And we see a good section of students, and we know everybody learns slightly differently. But the top tip, and I think this came out when in Abbie's, when she was talking, is you need to prepare well in advance. You can't just think you'll find the study time as and when. You need to nail it down, and you need to nail it down well in advance. Part of that is so you choose the right course. Is 20 weeks realistic? Is 10 weeks realistic? You need to negotiate with people around you, your employer, your family, if you have any dependents, even friends, because it's going to take up a lot of time. So that needs to be mapped out well in advance. You need to be organised and properly organised. When are you going to study? When do you study best? Now, for some people, it's not after work, and it's definitely not 11 at night. So you need to work that one out and organise your week accordingly. You need to break down your studies. Our brains are programmed to focus on what we don't know, and that's a fact. We can't get away from it, rather than what we've learned. And I think it's really important to, in order to stay positive and have a sort of healthy appetite for learning, you need to break down what you're going to do, know what you're doing in advance, and achieve it, and tick it off. Think, I've done that. And that really sets you up to learn more, and it promotes good learning. So don't think you can cram all of this, because you can't. There's just much too much to try and do that. Your practice assessments are vital if you want to know how you're going to perform on the day, and if you want practice on performing beforehand so that you do perform on the day, then you must attend our practice assessments on which you get feedback. And particularly with the orals, students struggle with nerves. So the more practice you can get, the better. So you know how to manage yourself, you know how to manage the documents and the paperwork, and give yourself the best chance to succeed. So you have to attend your practice assessments, and it tends to work its way back. The reason students don't attend them is because they haven't done the prep, and therefore they haven't felt able to have a go and submit it to us. So it's really important you keep up with your studies. And then you need to ramp up your revision as the assessments approach. There's just no getting away from that. You have to do that. And part of that revision includes topping up your knowledge from SQE1. And Abbie mentioned this, that the second time round it is much easier. You'll be surprised how much you've retained, but you want to bring it to the front of your brain so it's easily retrievable when you're under pressure and you're interviewing a client, that you can just spot the bit of legal knowledge you need in order to have a smooth interview and give the right advice. And of course, that counts for 50% of the marks. And then lastly, lean on your supervisors for personal support. You can't do it physically, nor would you, but you can do it online. They're there, we make them available for you, and you should be using that support network throughout the course, not just at the end, but right from the beginning. All right.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jane.
And then one more slide. So this just helps you focus on what you need to be thinking about and which course to choose. So we've got 3, and the 10 weeks is very full time. And I wouldn't recommend you try and work. If you're working part-time, I think it would really need to be very part-time, not 4 days a week. I really think you'd struggle there. You have to find at least 30 to 35 hours. And what I always say to students is learning can actually be fun. It can be interesting if you give yourself the right space and the right amount of time to do it. And also, this is knowledge you're taking forward into your working life. It's not knowledge you're going to dump. So learning it properly, thoroughly, and hopefully enjoying some of it is important. And part of that should feed into help you with your decisions to which course you choose. So on the full time, with one surgery per week, so that's like a mini lecture, and with one town hall meeting most weeks. And that's the sort of more holistic overview for the whole cohort. And we will discuss what you've done and what's coming up next and what you should be thinking about. Those 2 live sessions are also recorded because we recognise some of you might be at work or have other commitments. So they're recorded if you need to catch up, but also they're recorded. So if you want to revise, you can click back on them and watch them. Then 1 to 3 skills practices a week where you then submit the work you've done and we mark it and give you feedback. And then you have your personal supervisor session, or it's a small group supervisor session, and that happens about every 2 weeks on average. So you either have a one-to-one, it's about 15 minutes, or you have a group session, which is about 30 minutes with a small group and your personal supervisor. Then we repeat, so the content's the same, but it's just stretched out for the 20-week. And we reckon it's about 15 to 20 hours. And then you can see the breakdown there. So it's about half what you'd be doing on the 10-week. Again, surgeries and town halls are recorded, so you can catch up that way. And you have probably an average 1 skills practice feedback every week. And then you're meeting your personal supervisor about every 4 weeks or thereabouts. Then the 40 weeks is stretched out much more. And some might say, actually, you need to be even more disciplined because the temptation is just to come out the block slowly and think I'll catch up at a later date or maybe catch up over the Christmas holidays or whatever. But that's not recommended. You really need to just manage your time well and pace yourself well. And arguably at the end, you might have a little bit more revision to do because you're having to reach further back. So you might want to factor that in as well. But again, same contact hours, it's just stretched out over 40 weeks. All right. Good.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jane. Yes, as Jane's mentioned, obviously it's really critical just to pick the right duration and study mode for the SQE preparation course for you. There's just a few on the screen here of our next dates. So for the 10-week full-time, if you were considering that one, the next start date is actually a week on Monday, on the 14th of October. We are still accepting applications for that one, and then that leads to the SQE2 actual assessments in the new year. There's then a 20-week one that will be starting on the 21st of October. And we also have a 40-week one starting on the 2nd of December as well. The course fees for those intakes there is £2,300. Just to let you know, there's further intakes of all of those then in sort of January, February, and March time. There is an increase in price just to make you aware. They're due to be £2,700 from the new year. So there's another guide that's available to you to download should you wish to. There's a QR code here for our Secrets to SQE Success Guide, so where we'll be sharing further tips from other students and from the supervisors as well. So again, I'll try and pop that link into the chat in a moment so that you can access that later on if you wanted to. And then we will come to some of your questions now. So again, just on the screen here, there's some further QR codes should you wish to access them. You can book in a one-to-one chat with us. And also we have on LinkedIn, we have an SQE information group. Should you wish to join that as well, then you can do. Our email address is there and our phone number as well. So do please get in touch with us. So I will try and add those into the chat as well, and I'll stop sharing the screen just so I can bring up any questions that we might have. Okay, so I can see someone has asked a question with regards to being an international student and qualifying. Let's have a look. So if you have studied a law degree overseas, you may wish to consider a graduate diploma in law first of all. I'm not sure if you've worked as well in the legal profession in another country as well, because that has slightly different routes. So it may well be in that circumstance that actually you have an exemption from part of the SQE, which would normally be the SQE2. That's something, if in that situation, that you would need to just check with the SRA. If you go onto their website, you can see if qualifications that you've achieved or the work experience that you have there would be relevant for that. I think there was something on the Q&A. If there's any other questions that you have, please do feel free to add them. So someone is asking, in terms of study time, how many weeks prep is recommended for SQE2? Jane, you've covered this a bit. Would you mind sort of answering that before I ask some other questions?
I'm going to give a very lawyerly answer and say it depends. So it depends how much spare time you've got, depends on your other commitments, working, family, etc. What we don't recommend is that you study, and then have a huge break before you attempt SQE2. It's a little bit like a marathon. You wouldn't train and then take your foot off the pedal for 6 months and then rock up. So you do want to keep up the pace, but allow enough time to revise, and we do. Our courses are timed, so you've got about three to 4 weeks to revise. So I haven't given you a specific answer. I'm sorry.
And there's a question with the course: is there a study planner timetable for what needs to be completed each week?
Absolutely. Oh yes, we wouldn't let that one slip. So on Canvas, which is our online learning portal, you'll have your own calendar and everything is there. It's populated with the study units. So what you should study in a Monday morning, or if you're not full-time, then we spread it out, what you should be studying in the afternoon. That doesn't mean you have to study it then, but it gives you an idea of the running order and what you should have achieved by the end of the week. So you might choose to do it at the weekend, or you might choose to do it at the evenings, but it's all set out there in your own study planner. And that also includes things like town hall meetings, surgeries, and your one-to-one. So everything's there. So you can't go wrong at all.
And Abbie, you mentioned that in terms of revision, you very much sort of followed that structure.
Yeah, I think for me, I viewed it as kind of a weekly thing. There's certain tasks that are set to each day, but I viewed it each week and looked at the tasks that I needed to do in that week and tried to make sure that I did those in the time. I'd really emphasize that do not get behind, like make sure that you're doing everything each week as it's set out, because otherwise it's so difficult to have to catch up in later weeks.
Brilliant, thanks, Abbie. There was a question that was submitted earlier as well about studying online and how well that sort of prepares you for the actual sort of practical exams. I don't know if Abbie, if you've got thoughts on that at all.
I think the main issue that you're probably thinking about is the oral exams and the client interviews. For me, I don't think I could have been any more prepared for the advocacy or the client interviews. I thought that the feedback from the advocacy, say over Zoom or Teams, was really, really helpful, and it kind of emulates the actual situation when you're going into the exam, except you're in front of them. I don't know if you get nervous about being in front of someone, it's helpful to do it maybe in front of a family member or something leading up to the exams. But I think in terms of the assessments, I think that they're very realistic and they're very similar to what you do in person.
Brilliant, thanks, Abbie. There was a question as well about as someone who was studying overseas and needing to actually sit these assessments, Jane, they would need to come and actually attend in person, wouldn't they?
Yeah, that's right. For the oral assessments, they're not arranging them overseas. So yes, they have to attend in person. So do factor that in. And also just more generally, SQE2 takes a lot of organising, and quite often the slots go very quickly. So you do need to be quick off the mark. I've been told it's easier to book Glastonbury tickets than it is to get on SQE2. So you need to have an open mind as well, what your backup is. So it might not be the city closest to you. You might have to go somewhere else. So just bear that in mind.
And that's something that we guide on, Jane, during the preparation course in terms of timing for bookings.
We remind students. It is all there in the SRA website, but we do remind students because everyone gets very anxious because there's a lot going on, isn't there? It's not just having to pay the fee, but am I ready to sit it? And it's a bit of a trade-off between booking but not being sure if you're ready and committing the finances. So no, we do support students.
Yeah. Fantastic, that's great. Lovely. Okay, I can't see if there's any further questions at the moment. Just I think there was questions someone was asking about the SQE1. So obviously we're sort of focusing more on the SQE2 here this evening, but we do offer SQE preparation, SQE1 preparation course as well. There's lots of information on our website about that, and again I'll try and pop a link into the chat so you can have a look over that. But we do offer that in a similar way in terms of it's again fully delivered online, and we also have those options of being able to study it over a full-time or a part-time or extended part-time basis to fit around specifically around your own work commitments as well. So I'll see if I can pop some information on there about that as well.
Abbie, how did you find the SQE2 assessment out of 10? I'm putting you on the spot here.
I wouldn't really say it's enjoyable, but no, I thought they were well managed. Yeah, tough. You need to build your stamina. I think that's I think my top tips for SQE2 would make sure that your legal knowledge is there, because you cannot apply the skills without having that legal knowledge. It's all well and good saying, oh, it's 50% skills, but if you're asked to apply those skills to a really niche area of law, then it's just you're not going to be able to get the skills marks or the law marks. So I'd really emphasize the legal knowledge, and also like practicing in timed settings, because I found that difficult in the actual exams. Time goes so quickly, and that was the biggest shock for me during the exams is, oh gosh, I've got 5 minutes left. But yeah, I
know on the LPC when we used to mark interviewing there, and actually I think the benchmark was if the client leaves the room with totally wrong advice, then it's a fail, because there's no way, no matter how good you are, if there's that's it, you can't do it. So I mean, I don't mark an SQE2, but I'd be very surprised if that's not the case as well. But legal knowledge is key.
For sure,
as it should be if we're advising clients.
Yeah, exactly.
That's quite interesting to hear, Abbie, that you said how quickly the time actually goes, because they sound like such lengthy assessments, you know, unlike any other, you know, exams that you would have taken certainly at undergraduate level. So that's quite interesting that actually, you know, time does go quick during them.
Yeah, exactly. And especially you're trying to read the question really slowly, you're trying to read it again and again to make sure that you don't miss anything out. But at the same time, you really need to be quick about it. So it's finding a balance of making sure that you're getting all the key points from the question, but also making sure you're doing it in good time and making sure you're using your time as efficiently as possible. And to do that is just practice. And
I always say to students, it doesn't go in by osmosis. You do, just rubbing up against your books isn't enough. You do have to put in.
I wish it did.
I know, it would be fantastic if it did.
Just wondering, Abbie, was there anything during the assessments that you thought, oh gosh, I wish I could have turned back time and actually, I mean, obviously you passed it, so thankfully you perhaps didn't need to think that, but did you think actually I've revised completely in the right way, or was there anything that you thought, oh gosh, I could have done with a bit more of X, Y, Z?
I felt that I generally couldn't have done more when I was in the exams. You don't know what's going to come up. Really niche topics. Some topics you wouldn't even think to revise it in depth or anything like that. So it's just a case of applying all of the practice and the work that you've put in and doing your best job. I think for me, the most surprising thing was the advocacy and the client interview. Me, like many other students, really nervous for it. It's nerve-wracking to have to stand in front of somebody, but I was surprised at how much I actually enjoyed them compared to the written ones. And I thought once I'd done the first day of the advocacy and the client interviews, the second day I just went in and enjoyed it as much as I could. And yeah, so I wouldn't worry too much about them, even though they do seem really daunting, because it's not something that you do every day. But
Fantastic. Okay, I think we've answered everyone's questions. If anyone has got anything else they want to ask, then please do add it into the chat now. Otherwise, you can obviously contact us. I would just bring up the details on the screen again, should you need them. So I've just popped our contact details back up there. So you can come back to us with if you think of anything at a later date and want to get in touch with us at all. Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time, everyone, this evening. And we hope to be hearing from you soon. Okay, thanks all.
Thanks, Nicola. Thank you.
Thanks, bye.
Bye.